Hi, everyone. I'm Emily McCrary Ruiz Esparza, journalist and contributing editor of From Day One, our forum on corporate values. Welcome to today's webinar titled What We're Learning from Real AI Deployments in HR. Before we get started, we want to let you know about two upcoming webinars that you might be interested in attending. On August 18th, we're hosting one about the numbers behind the strategy, financial fluency for L&D leaders. In that session, we'll discuss the fundamentals of profit and loss in a simple, practical way designed specifically for L&D professionals, yet useful for any HR leader making the business case for their proposed investments. We also have a webinar on August 20th titled Don't Wait Until November, How to Plan Holiday Recognition That's Simple, Scalable, and Actually Meaningful. In that session, you'll learn how to build a holiday recognition strategy now before the rush hits that scales across your entire workforce, maximizes the value that employees actually feel, and makes HR the hero of the holiday season. I'm putting a link in the chat now to access tickets for these virtual events free of charge, and I hope we'll see you there. Now, today's session is about what we're learning from real AI deployments in HR. AI is often framed as a way to make HR more efficient. That framing misses what's actually happening. In this session, Jim Barnett, CEO and co-founder of Wisq, will share both a point of view and what he's learning on the front lines of building agents. Drawing from real deployments, he'll walk through what actually changes when AI takes on HR work. Cases resolved in minutes and not days, 24/7 policy guidance, and HR teams redeployed into more complex employee and labor relations work. Today's webinar is presented with support from Wisq, and I'll tell you a little bit about them. Wisq is the AI platform for HR and the maker of Harper, the world's first AI HR teammate. Harper is designed to handle the judgment-heavy work that has historically consumed HR teams: job changes, performance concern, leaves of absence, onboarding, and employee relations issues. Where HCM bolt-ons and chatbots deflect to the easiest question, Harper resolves full cases end to end. The result is an HR function with the capacity and strategic bandwidth to focus on the work that moves the business. Now, before we get started, a few logistical terms. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on demand soon after the event, so you can look out for an email in about 24 hours with that link. The same email will have information on how you can get professional development credits for this session from SHRM and HRCI. And look out for a written account of this conversation on our website at fromdayone.com. Around 45 minutes into the webinar, we will have a Q&A session. You can submit your questions at any time using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And remember, this webinar is designed to be of service to you, so please send us a question and we will aim to respond. With all of that said, let's get started with a poll before we meet our panelists. We want to know where you stand on today's webinar topic. Where are you with AI in your HR function right now? We're putting up a poll now. Please go in and take a look at that. And I'm pleased to welcome Jim Barnett, CEO and co-founder of Wisq, to lead today's session. Jim, tell us a little bit about your background in the founding of Wisq, and then we'll talk about the results of the poll.
Sure. Thanks so much. I'm really excited to be here with you and Dina and everyone who's joining today. So prior to starting Wisq, I actually spent 7 years building. I was one of the founders and the CEO of Glint, and spent 7 years in the employee engagement space. And my personal mission is to help people be happy and successful at work. So it's natural for me to do things in HR. And one of the things we learned at Glint was towards the end, we realized that HR teams were being asked to do more and more with fewer and fewer resources. And sort of a light went on for us. And I'll talk more about that once we talk a little bit about the poll.
All right, well, let's go to the poll results for now. The question is, where are you with AI in your HR function right now? Most popular response, just under 40%. Folks say they're just exploring, they haven't started. Second most popular response, they're piloting or testing something. And then the least popular, just 15% say they're ready to scale across the function. Is this surprising to you, Jim? Is this what you see when working with clients that most folks are on the exploring end of the spectrum?
Yeah, totally. That's exactly what we see. Very few people have implemented multiple workflows or any type of sophisticated AI system. So, yeah, this is perfect.
All right, well, I'll hand it to you to keep talking about Whisk and take us away for the conversation.
Great. Awesome. Well, as I said earlier, our time at Glint really informed why we built Whisk. And I shared about how teams were being asked to do more with less. And sort of a light went on for us that with the emerging changes in AI, we really felt like there was an incredible opportunity to automate a lot of the repetitive parts of HR. Like we felt like we actually had the opportunity to make certain parts of HR work like magic and help HR teams do the greatest work of their lives. And so, specifically, what we're talking about in this case is automating a lot of service delivery, operations, workflow, and processes that have consumed so much of HR's team time. And this is really a win-win. Sometimes we like to say what we do is we help teams, HR teams, become AI first, but also remain deeply human so that they can get back to doing the work that literally only they can do. Investing in people and teams and managers, designing programs that grow and retain talent, workforce planning, upskilling, etc., and making the calls that no one else can. And so that's what we felt the promise of AI is, and the vision for Whisk. So as that vision starts to come to life, what we find is routine work starts to disappear. And HR, in some ways, we like to think of it, actually gets a new job. If the old model, or maybe the model wasn't so much, but the old way of doing things, often HR was consumed with question answering, either literally the answer desk or feeling like the answer desk. Days were spent processing requests. Everyone was waiting, and strategic work often, was done in the leftover hours. And so we think there's like a new model that is really exciting, and it's HR as a system designer, where an AI teammate handles the routine and the HR team develops operating skills about how to work with that AI teammate, how to train that teammate, and monitor that teammate, and know when to jump in when a human needs to be in the loop with that AI teammate. And equally importantly, it enables the team, as I said earlier, to sort of focus on people and programs and strategy and teams and upskilling and all the things that actually put the human in human resources. So what that kind of looks like in practice is a change to the old tier zero, tier one, tier two, and tier three. Historically, there was a conceptual tier zero of self-serve, but the reality is a lot of what should have been in tier zero got pushed up into tier one, tier two, and even tier three. And so with AI, what happens is not only the things that were supposed to be in tier zero actually are in tier zero, but a lot more of historically what HR teams used to do move to the agent tier. And what that looks like is cases, when appropriate, close themselves because they're not ripe for any kind of action. Scaling without additional hiring, accurate, informed responses enterprise-wide, instant, always on 24/7 support around the world. It's a dramatically better model in terms of care and compliance. So if it's so good, why did teams stall? So we thought we'd spend a little bit time talking about what have we learned over the last few years across hundreds and thousands of interactions of where do teams get stuck? And then what are the 5 things they do actually when they're highly successful? So let's start with the stuck ones first. So I want to talk about 4 areas where teams often get stuck. The first one is somehow they think of AI as limited as Q&A. It's like uh, a simple question and answer. But that's really the floor, not the ceiling. The opportunity is an AI teammate, not a question and answer bot. Uh, and the real value is in cases actually that require judgment, leave of absence or LOA intake, employee relations situations, manager guidance. Most employments, unless you have an advanced system, just haven't gotten there and will never get there. Secondly, policy isn't everything. Okay. Your policy handbook isn't the same as the entire operating logic of the team. And the operating logic lives actually in how cases are actually handled. Without sort of organization specific reasoning, AI simply retrieves what the policy says, not necessarily what HR would do. The third one, the third one's really a stumble point. So I actually have some slides on this. I'm going to talk more about this one in detail, but it's about not being proactive enough with IT. Right now, IT is inundated with requests, AI requests, SaaS requests, security requests. There's just a ton going on for them due to the rapid changes going on. And what we've seen is that HR leaders that take the time to teach IT teams about the complexity and the nuance in HR and risks are much more successful. So I'm gonna take a little detour here and talk a little bit more about that. So IT has a tough job. I talked about that, and they can be highly reactive, which is gonna leave the HR team behind. You're going to hear things like, oh, yeah, we need to centralize platforms. Finance is pushing us for that. Let's use what we already have. Hey, we've got Jira. It works great for us. Why can't it work for the HR team? Our team will just monitor this stuff for you guys. Or we can build this ourselves. And so there's a lot of quick reactive responses to these really important, legitimate needs from the HR team. And what you end up with is, being pushed for a generic solution that's simply not going to work well for HR. Existing IT tools weren't designed for this, or a primitive, flawed solution. Sure, anybody can put their policies into a Dropbox or SharePoint or Box and ask Anthropic whether we have President's Day off or not. Like that's a primitive solution, but you want a robust solution. And who's gonna build this? And how long is it actually gonna take? Like, and who's gonna maintain it? And what's the true cost gonna be? Like these are the questions that you really need to be pushing back on. And just sort of one example of the complexity that IT doesn't fully understand. Like we get these kinds of requests and inquiries all the time. Hey, HR, hey, Harper, if it's, Wisq. I've worked here for 9 months and I live in California, but I'm moving to Boise. My spouse is having a serious medical procedure. I need time off to care for them, but I also might intermittent leave for myself. I have a condition. Like, how does this leave all work for me? And what happens to my health insurance when I'm out? Like these complex, really intricate queries that like simple bots aren't going to handle. So, three quick recommendations specifically about IT. The first one is gotta help them understand both the opportunity and the challenge. Like the AI opportunity is so large and so diverse. It's not talking to a bot about whether you have President's Day off or not. And workflows are often, I don't know, I tend to use this word messy, but they're complex, compliance ridden, lots of risk. So you got to teach your IT partners about this complexity and nuance and the size of the opportunity that you want to embrace. Okay, demonstrate all this with data. Like you've got email inboxes, you got ticketing systems. You know how your people are spending their time, the ones that are responding to inquiries and requests. And you should be able to know like which processes, if we automate them, are going to have the biggest impact. So it's really important to start gathering that data now before you meet with IT. Like, and your AI platform actually should tell you this. I'm gonna demonstrate that in a little bit. Um, so help them understand the challenge, demonstrate it with data, and thirdly, decide what matters most to you. Because time to value matters a lot. Like get up and running in weeks, not months or quarters. If it's employee experience, great. Talk them through the employee experience you want. Meet employees where they are. If it's compliance, make sure you're really specific about the workflows that you want to deploy and the costs associated with any type of hallucination or error. And if it's cost, I talked about this earlier. Like, how long is it really going to take? Like, really, to deliver even basic functionality? Okay, so that's number three, not being proactive enough with IT. Number four, thinking that this is one and done. No, your AI HR teammate is a continual learning experience and will be forever. Policies change, new models are released, those totally change how workflows who's operate. New workflows come up. A deployment that doesn't learn over time, it'll degrade. And companies that struggle, that have deployed AI and come to see us, it's often because they deployed a very basic or old school IT rules-based solution that simply doesn't work in the complex world of HR. Okay, so that's where things get broken before they even get working some of the time, before they get live some of the time. Like what are some of the things that teams that are doing AI right, companies like Breeze, like what are the top five things that they understand and they're embracing and doing? Okay, number one, they understand that it's critical to have true HR reasoning. I'm going to talk more about this. This is probably the most important part of of my part of our time together today. Like HR reasoning uses HR specific models, relevant policies, precedent, employee history, case specifics, guardrails, and it knows what not to say, not to guess, not to be pleasing. Okay, generic approaches, they'll try one size fits all, a generic a general purpose model, not built for HR, no domain tuned models, retrieval or planning, limited memory, chat and uploads only, doesn't really know employees, their case history, doesn't understand a document, just parses it, doesn't extract the meaning behind it, so it doesn't really understand HR speak. It's compliance blind, no check for conflicts, consistency, doesn't know when to escalate, triage, and hand off to a human. There's no feedback loop that makes it smarter and smarter. So it barely meets the basics and doesn't handle complex HR. What advanced reasoning looks like is very different. You're going to want to make sure you've got HR models and algorithms. They're powered by advanced models, fine-tuned on HR data, so they understand HR workflows, and algorithms built exclusively for HR. They can handle complex, long horizon workflows. We sometimes refer to those as messy workflows. They're not literally messy, but they're complex, multi-step, multi-day, multi-person, multi-system. Like this is not easy stuff and it needs to be done right 100% of the time. It needs to be compliance aware. It needs to understand your policies in every jurisdiction. It needs to learn continuously. It needs to understand how similar cases were handled before. It needs to use employee history, tenure, past leaves, prior cases, prior conversations. And it knows when to keep a human in the loop. It applies judgment and acts as a real AI HR teammate. If you remember one thing, that's the most important thing as far as I'm concerned. You have to have HR reasoning because you want to get this right. And it's going to get complex over time. Secondly, build from how you actually operate. So it turns out actually your case history has a lot of operating logic in it. All those tickets, or if you don't use tickets, if you use email or group inboxes, like there's a lot of operating logic in there, more than what your policy has. And so your workflow should build on that. So let me give you an example of the type of thing that you should be thinking about integrating into your system. So your system should be able to ingest all those inquiries and tickets. So this is an example where we've ingested 12,400 inquiries and tickets. So it should analyze them. It should identify for you the highest impact workflows. Funny story. Well, it's actually not so funny. We used to go to customers 2 years ago and we would say to customers, what workflows do you want to build? And they'd look at us and go, well, I don't know. We've never built a workflow. What do you think we build? And we said, well, here's what some other companies have built. And we thought that was really helpful. But now we find like actually what's really helpful is use AI to tell you what AI should be building. So your system should tell you the highest impact workflows and then actually go beyond. It should actually pre-configure them for you. Like it won't be able to do all the work, but it'll actually pre-configure them for you. So in this case, it analyzed 12,000 inquiries and tickets. It came up with 35 patterns, and the top five are combined for 36% of the volume and about 4,470 tickets and inquiries. It'll tell you, it'll tell you on the ticket side and the inquiry side what are the biggest areas that they're coming from. But then it'll tell you like, okay, here's the top five workflows we would recommend you build first. So number one on this list is personal information changes, address and contact changes. Okay, but it'll do more than just tell you what you should build. It'll actually design the workflow steps for you based on the information that's in your tickets and emails. And it'll actually design the artifact. A lot of our workflows end up in creating an artifact like an LOA intake document or a time and attendance violation document or something like that. So it'll actually design a first pass, the artifact for you. It'll give you a flow diagram to tell you what are the key steps that you should have in this workflow. Again, it's just a V1, a first version of it, but super helpful. It'll do that with all five of these. I could go down and show you that, and your system should do this for you. Like AI should tell you what the workflows are and should recommend what that flow should be. And then it should tell you like, well, what integrations am I going to need for these five workflows? And how long is it going to take HR to do that? And what's the business case when HR asks me why they have to do that? So it'll recommend the integrations, the key ones, the nice to have ones. It can even create a brief for you. So in this case, it's a brief for the IT team that'll tell you, what they should be building, approximately how long it'll take, and give them some guidance on how to build it. So these are the kinds of things that you're going to want in your system. It'll tell you the other workflows not in the top five, and it'll tell you which ones were excluded and why, because you might decide that actually it's not the top five by volume. It's actually ones that are strategically more important for you or taking more of your team's time. So yeah, so your system should do this for you. It should help you figure out what you need to build. Okay, recommendation three, identify and fix your policy gaps as soon as you can. Every company has policy gaps. And if you repeat without fixing those policy gaps, then the system will continue to either be able to not answer the question, or if it's actually a policy error, continue making errors. So, ambiguous and conflicting documents is something we see a lot. So your system should be able to fix this for you. A lot of people have various versions of various documents in their SharePoint, and the system should help you clean that up. That shouldn't have to be manual. Secondly, it should tell you where you have policy gaps and what you can do about it. So in this case, the system is telling you that there's 7 key opportunities you should focus on. And if you fix these, it'll improve your deflection rate by 6%. So, and then you should be able to go in there, and if it's a small thing, you should just be able to add that knowledge or upload a document. And then another point that's really important is policies always have underlying processes. Often they're not written down. And some policies are intentionally written uh, with discretion for the HR team. So in this particular example, it's discretionary bereavement is a policy that's written. There's a procedure that's actually not part of the policies, but then there's some questions that are indicated that you wouldn't know just from reading the policy. Well, the policy is bereavement can be taken for the death of a close family member, but the policy doesn't define close family member. Sometimes it's not black and white. How many days do they get? Do they get unpaid time, etc.? So your system should start to identify what are the processes and help you embed those in the system as well. Okay, recommendation number 4. This one is critical. Meet employees where work happens. Employees want help in the tools they already use. It's really simple. It's amazing how many companies ignore this. Teams, Slack, SMS, email. That's it. Like they're not going to go to an HCM for a question. They don't really want to do that. Or an intranet or a portal or a specialized app. Like make it super easy for them and let them actually do the work right in Slack and Teams, not just have a link in Slack and Teams. Number 5, set your system up in a way to improve over time. Every case should improve the next one. That's what separates a deployment that ages well for one that goes stale quickly. So one example of that is what we call learning loops. So there should be both manual and automated learning loops. So a question comes in, patterns emerge. This might be an alert that goes to your team, so you have to add a policy, or it might be a type of automated learning. But it's really important that you put these learning loops into your system so it can get smarter and grow and get better over time. Okay, so what's going to be the impact if you do all this? Well, in one word, I like to think of it as leverage. It's time back for your team so that they can do the work, as I said earlier, that only they can do. They can do more strategic work. Your team gets more consistent answers. Compliance goes up, legal risk goes down, and visibility goes up for everybody. So it's a big win. Uh, I'm really excited to talk with Dina very quickly. But before I turn things over to Emily and we have a conversation with Dina, we're going to do another poll.
Yeah, let's get that poll up and hear from our audience again before Dina comes back in. We're going to get another pulse from the audience whenever we can get that poll up. Here we go. The second poll is this: what is the biggest thing holding you back from doing more with AI and HR? We want to know, are you not sure where to start? That's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is you have the capacity to set it up and maintain it. And maybe you're even in the midst of doing that right now. Jim, while we wait on audience answers, do you have a prediction of what we're going to see in the results? It's probably related to the first poll we put up based on where folks are actually in setting up AI in their HR functions.
I'm gonna guess it's not exact. It's number. It's. I'm not gonna guess what they're gonna say,
Okay.
but I'm gonna guess it's buy-in collectively. I'm gonna cheat and say it's not just leadership buy-in. It's buy-in across the HR team, the broader team, and leadership.
It's a cultural thing then.
Yeah, yeah, it's a big shift for some companies, and sometimes the HR team doesn't isn't sure how to lead that.
What do you think, very briefly? This could probably be its own webinar. What's the difference between a culture that is going to embrace and operationalize AI more quickly than one that is not going to be able to?
Well, I think it's a culture where the HR team starts to lead in new ways. I mean, I know we're going to get to talk to Breeze, but when I think about Breeze and I think about Dina and Jeff Weber, their CHRO, like they had a very strong point of view. Like, this is important work. This is going to help us do an extraordinary job for our team. Like, we need to just let everybody know, like, we need to do this.
Yeah, an imperative. All right, let's see the results of the poll and see what our audience had to say. Wow, pretty evenly split. Most popular answer, but not by much, is just the capacity to set it up and maintain it. I think because it is still a new technology for a lot of organizations, it just feels like a big lift for folks. Second most popular answer is they're worried about the wrong answers or compliance risk. I hear compliance risk so often when I speak to employers, so I'm not surprised there. I'm going to hand it back to you, Jim. You take it away, and we'll hear from Dina from Breeze Airways as well.
Yeah, great. Yeah, compliance is actually pretty easy because if you just have the right system, you can put pretty aggressive guardrails in place and really limit what the system does, at least initially, until you get more and more comfortable. But with that, I'm really excited to talk to Dina today. She's a great leader and done an amazing job at Breeze. And I thought, Dina, I thought a really good place to start was for people who aren't familiar with Breeze, which is I think the fastest growing airline, an incredible airline. Maybe you could just take a little bit of time and paint a picture about the business, who's in your workforce, and what was it that made it hard for HR to support the team broadly before before the world of AI?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jim, for having me. Well, like you said, Breeze is a fast-growing airline, one of the newest airlines, and we provide nonstop service between underserved routes. And we support a geographically dispersed workforce. So we have personnel at airports. We have our crew, flight attendants, pilots in the skies. We have our maintenance personnel on the ground. We have our corporate headquarters folks that do all the support work behind the scenes. And essentially, HR has to support the operation that runs 24/7. And we work a standard, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday work schedule. So, talk about compliance and just complexity. You have HR, but then you have all of the regulations that come with being in the aviation industry. FAA, DOT, TSA, you're dealing with employment laws, state laws, and just multiple work groups that have different operational needs. So prior to, having Harper, we spent a lot of time just answering repetitive questions. Our role in team member experience is to enhance the team member experience, which means getting them quick responses, making sure that they are engaged, and they have that support readily available. So we were constantly, even though the information exists already on our intranet and just so many other, portals, they were still coming to us. We're the easy people services team to just ask the question. So we just saw a need. We were accelerating. We were growing so quickly, and we weren't necessarily growing our head count. So that's where Harper came in.
Yeah, thank you, Dina. So you mentioned like the diversity of your team and all that. With that diversity team, how did you get people to adopt a new technology? Because sometimes that's half the battle. Like, what did you do to make that work?
Yeah, we uh, thankfully we did have our leadership buy-in. But we leveraged that. The complexity was the reason why we needed HR, right? There's hundreds of policies. Many answers depended on the context. So back to the logical reasoning that Harper provided, it was easy to let our leadership know that there's a gap and that we actually need AI to solve for the complexities. And we spent a lot of time testing with the team, building in that logic, and we made it work for us. One of our values is ingenuity. So we look at things a little bit differently. We position ourselves as an industry disruptor already. But since we've grown so quickly, scalability was extremely important. And if we were to keep our exact headcount, we needed technology and tools to be able to support that growth.
Yeah, awesome. So, you talked about earlier, we talked a little bit about the collaboration between AI and humans. And I'd like to talk a little bit more about that. So, um, can you tell us a moment where like AI actually handed off to a human and it actually mattered? Like, can you give us one or two examples of that?
Absolutely. Two come right to mind. And you referenced it earlier, but when you're talking about leaves, it's complex. There's so many different types of leaves. We have very specific leaves as well. And as a team member who you really need to leave when something is going wrong and you need that additional support. And team members didn't know where to start. So with Harper, she explains the basics, right? The PTO, the sick time, the FMLA basics, eligibility, the next steps. And then the team member gets to engage with a people services team member because she gives it to us. This is exactly what the need is. And then we take it from there and we're able to have the conversation, have the empathy piece to it. So really, Harper handled the information, the triage, but we handled like the rest to help them feel supported by the people team. And then we also have our team member relations. Harper provides guidance to leaders. She coaches them. She coaches leaders. Our they explains our progressive discipline programs, just initiatives, best practices. And then it helps them prepare for difficult conversations, helps them draft communications, explains, the boundaries to them. And then once it becomes employee specific, they can, get the buy-in from us and they're already 90% of the way there. And they're empowered to make those decisions on their own using Harper.
Hey, in the poll, it was clear that some people that are watching were a little bit concerned about where to start or compliance issues. If you were to give them some advice on how they should think about getting started, what would advice would that be?
Absolutely. I would say lean into it. And I wouldn't necessarily start with AI. Start with the problem that you're having. So ask yourself, where do you spend too much time? What questions are on repeat every day? What work doesn't actually require, human judgment? And that's where you start. And then from there, we're 8 months in using Harper, and we've built on that significantly, right? From phase one to phase two and building workflows. But essentially automate those transactions so you have time for the more thoughtful leadership, the people partner work. And it definitely, that automation, that tier one, tier two work helped us get there. We started small, we built trust internally, we measured, right? What's working, what's the deflection rate, and then we just continued to improve. And it actually pointed out, to your point, Jim, some of deficiencies in our processes or gaps, and it really forced us to clean up internally, right, our processes and make sure that our workforce has the right information available to them, and Harper can answer their questions easily.
I think that's really good advice. You used a word I think is really important that start with the transactions. What we see is like the high volume transactions are the lowest hanging fruit for teams. Those also often are not as even complex, so it's relatively quick and easy to get up and running on those.
Absolutely. And I will say I've been able to upskill my team. So they're doing more important HR work today as a result of having Harper as a partner and being able to get those answers quickly to team members who don't work conventional hours.
Ooh, actually, that was on my list of questions to ask you. You're a step ahead of me. Let's talk more about that because I think one of the things that myself and other people are concerned about is like what are the new jobs? Because we know certain jobs are going to go away. Like what are the new jobs? So what are not saying the new jobs unless you have that, but like some of the new things that people are spending their time on now that they have the time and or the new responsibilities that they have, maybe maintaining Harper or your policies or whatever.
Absolutely. So my team now, I mean, previously they were answering a lot of emails, chats, helping get the policies in, the hands of our team members, just anything, right? Benefits, payroll questions, compensation, recruitment, onboarding questions. And now they're coaching leaders. They're solving team member relations issues. They're helping with workforce planning, reorg designing. And as an airline that's smaller and growing so quickly, it's so important to be available for those things as they occur. So the leadership development, process improvement, they're able to build programs and processes. And we're also able to look at the questions that team members are asking and say, hey, look, we actually don't really have a process or a policy or guidance for this. Let's build one. And then you're scaling with relevant information that your workforce is really looking for.
Yeah, I think you also your data also is in your case, well over half of your inquiries come in at times that aren't business hours for the HR team, given the 24/7 nature, 365 nature of your business.
Absolutely. And that's why Harper made so much sense for us. Aviation is complex, but the complexity and the need to have that support 24/7. Um, and our deflection rate is also high. So we were able to spend a lot of time with your team to build that logic and reasoning and make sure our team members are supported.
Yeah. Um, Thank you on that. Can we switch gears a little bit from like the low-hanging fruit, the transactional stuff, to the more complex stuff? Can you give an example of like a complex case that HR is handling today, or the type of cases, so people get a sense of like what's possible today?
Absolutely. There's so many that we deal with, but specifically, I mean, right now, we built a safety workflow to alleviate the gap between. Obviously, we have our safety reporting system, but a lot of people think, injury or something went wrong, they come to HR, and they come to Harper, and Harper's able to get that safety report over to our safety team while looping in people services and allow for that 24/7 support. It's also, helped clarify with some team members if they perceived their, let's say, interview process was not quite maybe fair and consistent. And it really gives them that insight on, hey, this is our philosophy, this is how we do things. And then it just builds that buy-in, builds that trust that we're doing the right things.
Speaking of doing the right things, one of the things that you and your team did was you got up and running pretty quickly. Not as quickly as today. Technology moves so quickly that, today companies could literally be up in weeks. But your team got up relatively quickly. What advice would you give to companies that are early in the process that are just starting to sort of think about kicking off an effort to get this up and live? Like, what are some of the things they might think about doing to ensure that things go smoothly internally?
Yeah. I think we saw AI as an opportunity to scale our service quality, our people services and we essentially we didn't look at it as, oh, can AI replace me, right? Can AI replace my team? We looked at it as how can AI make HR better? And it really elevated our people partner and thoughtful leadership approach. And I think with that, we were extremely open to the idea. And I will say that one thing that really helped us a lot is, with your team. Um, we we started with HR solving for, or Harper solving for HR issues, and said, owners, you own your operational manuals, right? And then as time went on, we were able to expand and build on that. But we spent a lot of time testing the answers, building the logic to make sure that it makes sense for others, um, um, and essentially really trust that Harper can handle it similarly to the way that one of my team members would as well. And it prepares the information for that next step when escalation is needed. So she's trained to recognize those escalation, those compliance risks, and get it into your hands faster rather than later. So, um, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a great way to end. I know it's 11:45. We wanted to move to Q&A at 11:45, so I'm gonna turn things back to Emily. Thank
Yeah.
you, Dina, so much. That was terrific.
Thank you, Jim.
Dina, don't go too far because there are some questions for you as well. So everybody stick around. Before we get into questions, I've been here listening to the conversation. Jim, you started out with the four recommendations, and I think number two is particularly worth focusing on, which was building from how you work. So when I speak to HR leaders, whether I'm speaking to them as a source for a story or moderating a webinar like this. And I think we saw it indicated in the second poll as well, that they struggle to get from chatbot that solves a very transactional question to workflow. And I think that's where so many companies are ready to go, but don't necessarily know how to do that. And I thought, well, you brought up about Harper being able to actually help them build a business case for these different policies, these different processes. That's really impressive because it that seems like it would be a very sort of self-fulfilling cycle there, right? The
Yeah,
tool
totally.
helps you make the business case to keep the engine going, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think people have those horror stories. Remember those rules-based chatbots where you'd get on a call and you'd be talking to a rules-based chatbot, and then it would say speak to a human. You go, speak to a human, speak to a human, speak to a human. And it was not a good experience. And today it's a whole new world. It's the technology has advanced so quickly and so well that we can actually collectively deliver really good experiences for employees.
I believe it was even less than 12 months ago that I did a story for Fast Company about employees' experiences with their HR AI. And so I went out and tested some that the companies were like letting me test drive, and others I did just poking around their websites. There was a company, it was actually kind of a big tech company, not like a Google, but a pretty well-known tech company. And on their careers page, you could chat with an HR bot and ask basic questions about, let me ask some more questions to see if I want to actually apply for a job. And I asked it, what, how do you make sure promotions are fair? It was something like that. I'm paraphrasing. And the response was something like, well, we have a lot of PTO available. And
No.
I thought, like, okay. But it was so frustrating because I thought, like, conceivably, that's actually a policy that they already have documented. Like, we're not even to the point where that is incorporated. Now, we're less than 12 months from that. And while I have not checked in on that company, the technology seems to have come so far. And like you mentioned, not only has it moved from the transactional, we're actually getting into really strategic work in which an HR leader can have a partnership almost in working with a tool like this. We have a lot of good questions. So shall we direct our attention there? Okay, this first one is for Dina. Keith asks, what metrics does Breeze use to determine if AI adoption is successful?
Yeah, that's a great one. Wisq does have a lot of metrics, right? How many inquiries you're getting, how many were escalated or deflected. So those are really good metrics. But I think for us, how we measure its success is the fact that we are able to do like elevated work. We're no longer answering tier one, tier two questions. So that alone tells me it's successful because as a workforce grows, the team member inquiries, obviously you can develop programs to be, better as well, but team members will still always come to, HR, people services for certain questions. And we really were operating in that tier two, tier three, very complex people partner work. And we've fully changed the entire structure of our HR day to day. So that to me is success.
Yeah, the other thing, adding on to what Dina just said, is like there's also metrics that you would want to deploy in your systems. So after every conversation, there should be a rating of that conversation, and you can see on a scale of 1 to 5, like what's your, just like in a consumer business, what's your average rating? As Dina said, your deflection or resolution rate is really important. Your time to response matters. The percentage of time it's citing a policy, the policy, if there is a policy. Those types of sort of data-driven metrics are really valuable.
We have a lot of questions for Dina. Sorry, Jim. The
No,
audience,
that's okay. Dina's supposed to be the star. Let her go.
they need to know information. Okay. Dina, this question you mentioned email a moment ago. An attendee asks anonymously, how did you actually get people to use the AI teammate? My worry is that we roll out something and everyone keeps emailing me with questions.
Oh my goodness, yes. I mean, there was definitely an education piece. We rolled it out slowly to our flight attendant, our people services group, then flight attendant group, which is our largest, work group, then everybody. But our CEO does a team member call, and I take the opportunity to give some stats about Harper, how people are using it. But in our people services inbox, we actually respond with a response from Harper and say, check out Harper. And there was a lot of that in the beginning of saying, hey, look, she also knows the response, right? And then today we actually on orientation day one, we introduce Harper from day one, and everyone just goes to Harper initially as they are, new team members being onboarded. So.
Okay, next question is this. How do you analyze high impact workflows if you don't have a ticketing system but rely primarily on email?
So we do have a ticketing system of
Mm.
sorts, but Harper also has cases. So you can manage complex situations as cases. And essentially, we do that as well internally on a different system. Less so now, though. I will say that since a lot of our metrics are already built in. Yeah.
Jim, anything to add to that?
No, I think that's a really good answer. And I think what she said is really important about, looping your agent should sit in a group email boxes.
Mm.
So whether it's Harper or something else that you have should sit in those inboxes and know when to respond and when not to.
Okay, the next question is from Kaylee, who asks, Dina, how did you prepare your workforce for this transition? Sounds like now it starts from the word go, but maybe what was the curve like at first?
Yeah, I mean, I believe in the, internal promoters. You get the buy-in, you experiment with a few leaders, you show them, and they become your internal promoters. And for me, it was the people services group. It worked, right? The questions they were, day to day answering, whether it's leaders, new team members, et cetera. It was just able to solve for it. So again, we built that trust slowly but surely, and now it's just a trusted service. And I check up on Harper. I make sure she's answering properly, and my team does as well. And we learn from her responses and the questions being asked.
Yeah, so your system, you should be able to go into the system and see all the inquiries and
Mhm.
see the responses. And I actually, as Dina said, and then also see all the cases. Like, so anytime a workflow is being created, you can see the conversation. You should be able to see the conversation, the logic that was used, and all that good stuff behind it.
Any interesting patterns, Dina, that you've observed in the questions asked, and then Jim across clients? Maybe something that surprised you about the questions or problems that employees come with. Dina first.
I think we do NPS internally, and you rely on the feedback from NPS to make these, changes, refining processes, enhancing the team member experience. When today, just seeing what they're asking, it might surprise you, it helps us take some data and say, hey, Team X, I think we need some material surrounding this topic. It's quite popular lately, right? And it's helped us build just processes internally and just education, right? Then we'll take the opportunity on the next team member call to casually talk about this topic that has been popular without necessarily mentioning it, but providing that clarity around that topic.
Hmm. One of the attendees asks, you talk about Harper like a teammate. When did Harper stop feeling like software and start feeling like part of the team?
Well, I don't know how you all talk to, your AI chat GPT, but I mean, people say thank you, appreciate it, right? So for me, she is humanized, right? She has a picture, she has a name, but in reality, she responds like a team member. So um, we refer to her as such. So
Oh
she
my God,
really is
your
HR
team was so
generalist.
nice to Harper on day one. Remember those messages that came in? Like somebody was saying, "Hey Harper, you got this. Welcome to the team. You're gonna crush
Totally.
it."
It's
By the
also how
way,
we presented her as well, right? We trusted Harper, and it did inherently build that into our workforce as well.
Emily, you asked a question earlier that I didn't jump in on, which was like the key learnings or like what
Mhm.
surprised you the most. Uh, there were two examples of diversity, not people diversity, but that were really important for us to learn. One is only about 25% of inquiries and requests have anything to do with your HCM system. So there's a high diversity of inquiries that come in. The second thing is because of that, there's a high diversity of integrations that you have to do. And it's interesting how diverse those systems are across customers. Like it's not like there's just one HCM, one document storage system, one email system. Well, there probably is one email system, uh, but beyond that, there's a tremendous amount of diversity. So you have to really embrace both system and inquiry diversity in any system.
Okay, let's see what we can get to in the last few moments. Dina, do you have any other feedback from your team about specific cases where AI has helped them be innovative?
Yeah, I think one thing, especially during the rollout, while she is an HR platform, we were getting a lot of other questions as well. So our workforce became comfortable using Harper and asking, department specific questions. And that allowed us to um, let their leaders know, right? Like, hey, your workforce is unclear about this. Maybe we include it in their training, or maybe we add it to this series, educational series that you do, right? So we're able to again really partner with leaders, and I think that was when we see the questions asked, my team's like, we need to teach Harper this, and give that guidance to leaders or translate it essentially to their day to day too.
Yeah, it's just another example of how HR becomes, I think every day more and more indispensable to the business side of things, right?
Totally.
It's a data heavy function, and this is another source of data that the function collects really well and can use in other
Yeah.
departments. Dina, Jim, thank you so much for being here, for telling the story of Harper and sharing what you know. Thank you again to Wisq for their support and to all of you in our audience for participating today and good questions too. Before you all sign off, I'm going to drop the link again to some tickets to some upcoming webinars that are free of charge On August 18th, we're hosting one about the numbers behind strategy, financial fluency for L&D leaders. And on August 20th, we'll have one titled Don't Wait Until November, How to Plan Holiday Recognition That's Simple, Scalable, and Actually Meaningful. I'm putting a link in the chat now to access tickets for these webinars free of charge, and I hope we'll see you there. So on behalf of all of my colleagues at From Day One, thanks for participating, stay well, and bye for now.